Welcome back to Jungle Gap. Today I wanted to give a quick video on my initial thoughts on 1410 Split 2 with my jungle tier list and give an explanation on what my thoughts and opinions are having played on this patch for almost a week now. I know that I may not cover every single detail of this patch, but the purpose of this video is to give you guys some insight on what the jungle meta is right now and which champions are going to be the strongest. Quickly, I just wanted to preface this video because I forgot to mention that this is just my opinion. This isn't really targeted at any specific elo bracket. This is just what I think are the strongest champions in the patch right now. Okay, so I'm going to leave these kind of bullet points on the screen because this is basically just giving some context, some reasoning, some justification of kind of what my thoughts are and why the champions are placed in the tier that they are in. So starting off in the S tier, we have Karthus. And, because the mage items right now, the one called Faded Ashes, which is 900 gold, which is an extremely OP item, paired with the fact that the jungle XP got buffed, this patch was kind of just seems like it was just made for Karthus. Exhaust also got buffed. Karthus loves taking exhaust. And so you'll see a lot of the full clearing junglers that abuse this item are going to be kind of high on the tier list. But I think that Karthus and also joining him in Lilia are kind of a step ahead of the others, which I'll explain why as we get to the others. But these are, in my opinion, the S tier junglers in terms of the full clearing ones that abuse Faded Ashes and Blackfire Torch. These are the strongest right now. And so joining these other two champions in S tier, we have Viego, which is kind of interesting because I've had kind of mixed feelings about Kraken Slayer right now. I think, as you can read, Kraken Slayer losing Noon Quiver is pretty big. The build path now feels kind of bad, not having the Noon Quiver. Although we do lose, like the crit for move speed is kind of a buff, right? But I've tested just going straight Triforce, and I do believe also with the Black Cleaver buff that the new Viego build path is going to be kind of Trinity Force, Black Cleaver if the enemy is stacking armor, if you're versing tanks, or you'll just go Sterak's Wit's End, something like that. Because I don't think that also they gave Kraken more attack speed. I just don't really think Viego needs it. If you feel like you need damage or more attack speed, you're just going to go Wit's End. And with Triforce Wit's End, you don't need more attack speed than that. I think it's a bit overkill. So another reason why Viego finds himself in S tier is because the Sundersky Eclipse champions got nerfed. This naturally just makes Trinity Force or Stride Breaker champions better. And of course, Viego is a really good Trinity Force user. And also just a lot of other things were getting nerfed, which we'll get to, but it kind of just pushes Viego up in the tier list. So moving on to the A tier, the first champion we have is Taliyah. Another champion that really, really loves the XP buffs to the jungle, another full clearing kind of sequencing, cycling jungler. She's really loving the Blackfire Torch, a champion that needs mana and, just helping her clear speed so much with Faded Ashes as well for 900 gold. And the biggest reason I have her under Karthus and Lilia is because I kind of feel like she is more situational. She's a bit more comp dependent. You want to be picking this with champions like, the Renekton, the Nautilus, things that set up your W. And you also want to be picking it in games where the enemy champions have a lot of dashes because that's kind of how her E works, right? You want to pick it to counter people diving onto you, counter people with dashes. And so that's why I have her a tier below Karthus and Lilia. Moving on to the next champion, Diana, another champion that loves the another full clearing sequencing champions, loves the XP buffs. You can build the Andries on Diana. I don't think you need to build Blackfire Torch because she doesn't really need mana. But of course, Diana is a champion that loves to build Nash's Tooth. So I think Diana now you build Nash's Tooth into Liandry's, into Zhonya's, Deathcap, Voidstaff, something like that. But I think Diana's been a little bit slept on for a while, and with all of the nerfs coming into kind of all the other items and champions, it kind of just pushes her up in the tier list. Next champion we're going to move on to is Ivern. And this is an interesting one because we have the new boots, the Symbiotic Souls and the Synchronized Souls. I don't actually think you should build them on Ivan, even though I haven't experimented that much. I still think Ionia Boots is extremely important for Ivan, being able to smite more, and you know, just CDR is extremely important on Ivan. But this is something that I still need to test some more. But I think the item is a little bit underpowered right now. Maybe you would only build this on some supports, such as Pyke, I don't know, Blitzcrank. I think the 4-second recall is also something that's just kind of like doesn't really matter. But I'm a bit, I'm not really sure yet on that. Rek'Sai is in A tier, like I said before, from the Sundered Sky Eclipse nerfs. It means that Trinity Force / Stridebreaker champions become better. I think Rek'Sai was another champion that had kind of been slept on as well. And right now his win rates, or her win rates, are just extremely high. So that's a reason why, even though not a full clear champion, and although I also haven't really tested Rek'Sai that much, the win rates are kind of too high to ignore. And so that's why I have Rek'Sai in the A tier. Moving on to Evelynn, just a champion that's always going to be strong. I do believe you can probably build... she's still going to want to go Lichbane, but potentially Liandry's second. This also goes with Nidalee. Nidalee and Evelynn, kind of the same thing. Full clearing junglers, really, really like the patch. Have always been strong, so they've only gotten better from this. Of course, with Nidalee, you can play her also high tempo, but she does have the option to just full clear. And kind of play to outpace the enemy jungle. And I think both these champions, the best build is Lichbane into Liandry's, where you can also build the Faded Ashes early, because the item is just kind of so good. Now moving on to Brand. This is an interesting one. Why is he not an S tier? I believe the Ghost nerf actually kind of made him a lot weaker than we think. Obviously still an A tier, so still viable, but he would be an S tier if not for the Ghost nerf. That's kind of my reasoning on why he sits in A instead of S. And finally finishing off the A tier, we have Kindred. I know that I said before about, the Kraken Slayer losing Noonquiver is really, really big. But she also has other build paths, so now you can go PTA with kind of collector IE build, just one-shot squishies, because, ADC items got buffed insanely hard for some reason. And then if you verse kind of more tankier comps, you can just go Conqueror with Kraken Trinity Force, which is why I've put her in A tier. Now, moving on to B tier. These are champions that are either, Sundered Sky Eclipse champions that are still good, but just not on the same level as the A and S. These are also some tanks and some other lower tier champions that like abusing Faded Ashes. So going over quickly, Elise is in B tier. I believe that she's not a full clearing jungler, but she can abuse the Liandry's. I was kind of thinking about Agurin when I put her in B tier, because he always built Liandry's anyway. And that's the reasoning I actually have her in B tier. I actually think she could be pretty decently, like a decent pick. Moving on to Zac, I think that with the Balmy Cinder and Sunfire buff, and also potentially being able to use Liandry's, and also he was already in a decent spot before this patch, I think that just kind of makes him a very, feasible pick, pretty viable. Picking him into comps that have, not a lot of mobility is really good, and when you need a tank, is a very decent option. I would say this pick is more so for... It can be played in any rank, but more so to aim towards the lower end, under kind of master tier diamond, I would say. Nocturne, just like the Rek'Sai, really like Stridebreaker. Although we lost Lethal Tempo, I actually think the new PTA is decent on Nocturne. But kind of still, losing Lethal Tempo was a really, really big nerf to Nocturne, in my opinion. That's why I have him in B tier. Xin Zhao, one of my favorites. Another one that really got nerfed from Sundered Sky Eclipse. I think the new build for him now is just kind of going tank with like the Sundered Sky Cleaver. This champion also likes Cleaver, so that's why he's not super terrible. But I just think he is just that step below all of the champions in A tier, just because of the fact that Lethal Temper got nerfed, then his Halo Blades, Eclipse, Sundered Sky build got nerfed. So now you kind of just play him Sundered Sky Cleaver, which is kind of the competitive build. And also the XP buffs, not really a full clearing jungler, so that's why I have him sitting in B. Vi next. Vi is an interesting one because Cleaver got buffed, which is really nice for Vi. But again, she's kind of a champion that is a little more comp dependent. I think she is strong, but kind of like Xin, right? She's kind of serves the more so utility tank side of things, which is not always the best case if you're trying to climb in solo queue. You're much better off just playing one of these champions that full clears at the speed of light and doesn't really rely on your team or on, picking Vi in cases where, she is really strong at locking down champions that have a lot of mobility. That's kind of her purpose. So kind of a good counter pick, but she doesn't need to be picked as a counter pick. Shyvana, another one that I feel like could be utilizing the Faded Ashes. Just kind of like Diana, but a worse Diana, I would say. That's kind of all my thoughts on Shyvana. Just a worse Diana. That's why I have her in B instead of A. Gragas, this is a champion that has been decent for a while. Doesn't really get played a lot, but again, likes to full clear as well. He obviously has a very good gank, but it is also another champion that can, just like Nidalee and Evelynn, he can build Lichbane into Liandry's, which could be strong, but obviously just not as strong as the Nidalee and the Evelynn. Rumble, exact same thing, can build Liandry's. I think this is a champion that probably requires a bit of champion mastery, but I think it's a little bit slept on as well. For the same reason, the item, Liandry's and Blackfire Torch are just so strong. You wouldn't build Blackfire Torch, but this is kind of the reason why a lot of these champions that potentially shouldn't be in B tier are in B tier. Amumu, Udyr, similar thing, right? Full clearing champions that build Faded Ashes, that build Blackfire Torch, that build Liandry's are just going to be higher on the tier list. Moving on to the C tier now. This is unfortunately the kind of tier that a lot of champions got kind of forgotten about in this patch, to be honest. Starting off with Skarner, he did receive a little bit of a nerf. I don't actually think this affects him too much. I did have a lot of indecision about where to place him on this tier list, whether it should be B or C. But I came to the conclusion that he's kind of just worse than Zac. He's worse than Udyr. He doesn't abuse the mage items. And, you can still pick him, especially when you get to high elos as well. His kit is very, very basic. So anything under kind of diamond, I think that he's probably more viable than C tier, but in my opinion, just the champion strength. Very, very kind of straightforward, simple kit. There's a lot of ability to kind of outplay him. So that's why he finds himself in C tier. Shaco, alongside a lot of the other lethality champions. To be honest, I haven't actually tested that many lethality champions, but as I have, here, I feel like they seem weak. There's not really any compensation for the Ghostblade nerf that happened a few patches ago, and now with the Eclipse nerf that happened a few patches ago. I feel like they've just taken a bit of a back seat in this meta. Obviously, Shaco is he likes the XP buffs. But yeah, I just think the lethality items are too weak right now. And this is kind of the meta for the mage junglers. Moving on to Wukong. As a Trinity Force user and a full clearing champion, I actually think that Wukong isn't actually that bad, but kind of just gets outshined by Xin and Vi if you're looking for that kind of playstyle. Definitely still playable. I think, he has potential to be in B tier, to be honest. But yeah, like I said, just gets outshined by Xin and Vi for that kind of style. I would say if you're looking for more of a carry-oriented Xin or Vi, you could go with Wukong. That would be very, that would be kind of acceptable. Okay, Olaf, I feel like if you're wanting to play an AD full clearing jungler, this is something I'm also unsure about. Need more testing, but for now I have him in C tier because not much has changed. He's still kind of a champion that, even though the XP buffs are nice for him from the camps, the reason top Olaf works so well is because Olaf as a champion is just a stat checking champion, right? If you're not stronger than the enemy, it's either like they one-shot you first or you one-shot them first, which is why top Olaf exists and jungle Olaf doesn't. I think this could be, yeah, like I said, a good option if you want to play a full clearing AD jungler. He does like building Triforce. He does like the Black Cleaver buffs. He does like Stride Breaker. So honestly, could be OP. Still unsure. Need more testing. Sejuani, have her in C tier. Honestly, not a bad champion, but again, does kind of get outshined by the other tanks. Like Zac, like Udyr, like Amumu, the people who can use the Faded Ashes. But if you're pairing Sejuani with melee champions on your team, so if you have like a Fiora, if you have any of these melee champions, you see at MSI, Sejuani was actually quite prominent in the meta actually. But in a solo queue kind of environment, she requires a bit more team play, and you're going to find yourself relying on your teammates a lot more. If that's your thing, you can play Sejuani no problem. Just make sure you pair her with other melee champions. Hecarim, unfortunately, with the Ghost nerf, he's been kind of gutted time and time again. Not really even sure what build you'd go on him anymore. I just think he's in a very, very rough state. I guess you could potentially build Triforce. But really, you wanted to build him lethality before, and everything just got nerfed. If you want to play a full clearing AD jungler, it's probably better off you play Olaf, honestly. Haven't obviously tested every single champion here, but this is just kind of my opinion. I think Hecarim is probably not on the cards, and that's why he's in C tier. Moving on to Jarvan. Again, this is another utility champion that just gets outshined by Vi, by Xin. Is very good if you're versing champions like Aphelios, like Lulu, Syndra, Orianna, where his ultimate has a lot of value, he is still pickable. He's a champion that I still pick myself. But obviously not really comparable with some other champions that are above him, right? He does like Cleaver, so his build now is probably going to be Sundered Sky Cleaver into just full tank. So, not in the worst spot, but very kind of situational. Rengar, just like Shaco, I don't really have much of an opinion. I just think that lethality is weak right now. This could probably be, if you're really, just kind of like a Giga Smurf on Rengar, you could probably still play him. Volibear, yeah, this is going to be another champion that just got too hard hit by Sundered Sky nerfs. And when I say Sundered Sky Eclipse nerfs, I'm not saying that these items are bad. It's just that when you nerf something, other things just become better. And Volibear was already kind of starting to fall off a little bit. And it just wouldn't be, if you're looking for something really, really powerful to play in the early game but falls off extremely hard, you can go with Volibear, but there are just better picks, again, like the Xin Zhao, like the Vi, like the Viego, that you have options for. Master Yi got gutted, not much to say. Lost Lethal Tempo, also got nerfed. I'm not sure why Riot hates him so much, but yeah, he's basically finished. Warwick, I'm kind of thinking Warwick and Briar are kind of in the same boat here. I don't even know what he used to build on. I guess he was a Stride Breaker user. But the meta right now for him when he's going up against champions like Karthus, like Lilia, like, these full clearing champions that are just going to outpace him, he's kind of just outmatched. And that's also why Briar has also fell off so hard. I think these champions are pretty good in lower elo, so, kind of below diamond. These champions are still very good, still very viable, but yeah, kind of getting out. They're kind of just getting outdated. Not outdated as in their kits, but yeah, their kits are also very straightforward, which means that just like the Skarner, they're very straightforward kits, which makes them better in low elo, worse in high elo. And finally, Kha'Zix, same reason as the Rengar and the Shaco. Although it is full clear meta, he does like that. I think potentially Kha'Zix could be in B tier as a lethality champion. But I think that the build path is kind of too bad for him right now. And also the reason I remember the reason I actually put him in C tier is because I do think Ghost is very important on Kha'Zix as well, and the fact that that also got nerfed, too many nerfs that are putting him in C tier. All right, now moving on to the Unsure could be OP. I have a few champions here, and we'll move on to the other kind of categories in a second. But we'll run through this very quickly. Zyra, reasons I've already stated, could be OP. Is a champion that's a little bit slept on, I still think, in the jungle. Clears very quickly. Similar kind of playstyle to Brand, where she's going to abuse Faded Ashes. She's going to like the Blackfire Torch and the full clearing kind of meta. Potentially OP. Fiddlesticks, exact same reason. Mordekaiser, exact same reason. Full clearing champions that use Liandry's, that, kind of loving the XP buffs, potentially could be OP. So that's why I have them in this category. The reason why they might not be potentially OP is because they kind of also just get, like I've been saying about some other champions, they kind of get outshined by the Brands and the Lilias and the Karthus. But it's just up for kind of experimenting and deciding later on. Counterpicking, this is a category I have in its own because these champions are strong actually when you counterpick. So for example, Rammus, if you verse full AD, if you're versing a lot of AD carries, a lot of champions that rely on attack speed, very strong. Jax, very, very strong into the kind of melee auto-attacking champions, like the Zins, like the Vise, any auto-attacking AD champion. Similar reason to Rammus is very strong. I think you could still pick Jax alone without versing that, but that's when he's especially strong. Poppy, kind of like Talia, where when you verse a lot of champions with dashes, Poppy is very strong. But just keep in mind that you're going to be taking on more of a utility ganking role. So you may find yourself in situations where you are down 4 levels to the Talia who's just full clearing. But as a counterpick, could be strong, probably a lot stronger in high elo where, stopping important dashing abilities is kind of crucial. Morgana is in the counterpick tier because, again, gets outshined by champions like Brand, champions like Lilia, champions like Karthus, kind of just does what they do but worse. However, she does have the Black Shield. So, just for a random example, if you're versing a Vi, you basically just hard counter his entire identity because when he ults in on your AD carry, you press the Black Shield, your AD carry doesn't get CC'd, you bind him, he dies. That's kind of how that works. And lastly, Trundle, probably an extremely bad meta for Trundle, but I just decided to put him in counterpick anyway, just in case you're versing, a lot of tanks. He could still be viable. You could build him Triforce and Stridebreaker, and I think he's probably playable. Now, moving on to the next kind of category. This is a category where I've kind of just put champions that you require an extremely high champion mastery. I wouldn't suggest playing these champions right now. And we'll start off with Bel'Veth. Yes, this has been a champion that's been in my tier list, A tier, S tier for the longest time. But I think these Kraken nerfs are pretty big, losing Noon Quiver. And I've kind of also realized that this champion is just a Giga Smurfing champion. It is just a champion where you say, I'm better than you. You run around the map, out skirmishing, out ganking everyone. And that's kind of how my opinion has evolved around Bel'Veth. High champion mastery is required. And, it's kind of just like, I'm, just be good kind of champion. And that goes for all of the rest of the champions in this tier list and in this category. Lee Sin, if you're better, you'll win. You see a lot of highest rated Korean challenger players. They have Lee Sin as one of their champion. Yes, Sundered Sky Eclipse is nerfed, but it's still obviously playable, and Lee Sin is still obviously an extremely strong champion where you need to be skirmishing early. Only play Lee Sin if you're like at least master tier and above. That's pretty much all that's to say about Lee Sin. Silas, Giga Smurf champion. Only play him if you're extremely competent and extremely proficient. And I don't even need to go for the rest of the champions. The exact same kind of thing that I'm saying applies to all of them. And lastly, nerfed or just no. These are champions that are just not. You could play Nunu, I guess, but these are mostly champions that have just been nerfed, or they just don't really have like a purpose. I would say Pantheon maybe he doesn't deserve to be here. Maybe he deserves to be in C tier. But the other champions are kind of just like nerfed or not really playable. I guess Nico could also be in the unsure, so I'll actually move Nico to unsure, could be OP. And Pantheon, maybe he doesn't deserve to be here either. But these champions definitely don't play these. Okay, so that's going to conclude this video. Leave it in the comments below your thoughts and opinions. If you disagree with me, let me know why. If you agree, let me know why. This was supposed to just be a really quick video on what I think currently in the patch, in the meta that is strong. Like I said, this isn't directed towards any kind of ELO bracket. These are just my own opinions. I'm sure that my opinions are going to change as I constantly kind of adapt to reasonings of why I think things are strong or weaker than others. Of course, this is only just a week of playing, and I just wanted to kind of get a video out to you guys as soon as I could.